Well, that's where we are now with this whole funding battle after the president called over leaders of Congress, Republican side, to a meeting at the White House in which he basically told them that he needed to have something about border security in the bill or he certainly wasn't going to sign it. The president, in a statement from Sarah Sanders saying, quote, President Trump just met with Republican members of the House. Not surprisingly, they all feel strongly about border security, stopping the flow of drugs, stopping human trafficking, and stopping terrorism. We protect nations all over the world, but Democrats are unwilling to protect our nation. We urgently need funding for border security, and that includes a wall. When the Speaker of the House, whose last day is supposed to be today, walked out of the White House, it was clear that the president dug in his heels and said, I want something more than what the Senate gave me last night. Listen here.
So what we're going to do is go back to the House and work with our members. We want to keep the government open, but we also want to see an agreement that protects the border. We have very serious concerns about securing our border. So the president said he will not sign this bill. So we're going to go back and work on adding border security to this, also keeping the government open because we do want to see an agreement.
Just for the record, here are the 12 members of Congress on the Republican side who were in the meeting. It was the Speaker Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, the incoming Minority Leader, Steve Scalise, Liz Cheney, Mo Brooks of Alabama, Jim Jordan, additionally Mark Meadows, Paul Mitchell, Chris Gibson, Mark Walker, Barry Loudermilk, and Ann Wagner all there as well. But the real question now, Dana, is I'm not sure what they do because the Senate's left town, and if they pass a measure that's got funding for border security in it, there's nobody from the Senate to take a look at it. The president will be speaking at 2:30. We do know that, so we'll probably have something to say about this. It's also interesting to note, too, that the president has kind of stopped talking about a, quote, wall and is now talking about a steel slat barrier, which maybe Democrats may find more palatable. I doubt it, but he's talking about it in different terms.
Well, he's giving them some options. I did have one question for you, which is that why didn't the president say anything before the Senate voted on the bill that now he doesn't like?
You know, I was talking to White House officials yesterday afternoon when the idea of the CR was floating around the Senate, and I said, so are you're going to eat the CR and sign it? And the consensus seemed to be, yeah, the president would, reluctantly sign it. But then the president woke up this morning and clearly was of a different mind than what his aides told me yesterday. So he wants this funding for border security. What he can't get out of Congress, he's going to try to get out of existing appropriations. So this tale has yet to be told in full. And like many things around here at the White House, it's going to be a doozy.
I will not surrender this nation to the whims of criminal organizations who prey on the vulnerable, who hurt women and children, and who spread human misery and suffering. Human trafficking and massive drug inflow must also be stopped. It's at a tremendous level. What we're doing and the incredible job being done by Border Security, ICE, Border Patrol, local police, and the military. The military has been incredible. And we're stopping them. It's a process you wouldn't believe how tough. But we're stopping them in record numbers. At this moment, there is a debate over funding border security and the wall, also called, so that I give them a little bit of an out, steel slats. We don't use the word wall necessarily, but it has to be something special to do the job. Steel slats. I've made my position very clear. Any measure that funds the government must include border security. Has to. Not for political purposes, but for our country, for the safety of our community. This is not merely my campaign promise. This is the promise every lawmaker made. It is the solemn promise to protect and defend the United States of America, and it is our sacred obligation. We have no choice. For decades, Washington abandoned this commitment and allowed millions and millions of people to enter our country illegally and over the objections of the American people. No one voiced or voted for a policy. No one endorsed this policy, and no one ratified this policy. It was a total assault on our democracy itself. Illegal immigration costs our nation $275 billion a year. You hear many different numbers. You can say billions and billions, but the number that I hear most accurate is $275 billion a year at least, millions of jobs and thousands of innocent lives. More than 90% of heroin comes across our southern border. Heroin deaths have tripled since 2002. Every week this illegal heroin kills at least 300 Americans and costs our nation over $230 billion to $289 billion, or nearly $5 billion a week. I spoke with President Xi of China, and he has agreed to make fentanyl another one of the big problems. And probably, I think it's just gone to number one, kills 80,000 people a year in our country. He's going to make that a major crime in China. And if you get caught, you pay a major penalty. It's called the death penalty. And it wasn't listed as a crime until I spoke to him. So I appreciate President Xi for doing that. That's going to have a tremendous impact. Every day, 10 known or suspected terrorists try to gain entry into our country. Every day, 2,000 illegal aliens try to cross our borders. They try. We get most of them. It's hard without a wall. Every year, 50,000 illegal children are smuggled by coyotes and criminals into our country. In the last 2 years alone, ICE officers arrested criminal aliens charged with or convicted of 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 murders. It's rough stuff. Yet the Democrats continue to oppose border security no matter how many innocent people get hurt or die. Ridiculously and dangerously, certain people want open borders, which allow potentially massive crime. Our nation has spent trillions of dollars and sacrificed thousands of brave young lives defending the borders of foreign nations. I am asking Congress to defend the border of our nation for a tiny fraction of the cost. Essential to border security is a powerful physical barrier. Walls work, whether we like it or not. They work better than anything. In Israel, 99.9% successful. Think of it. I spoke to Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister, 2 days ago. We were talking about it. He said it's 99.9. I mean, he came up. I didn't ask. I said 99.9% successful. We have proposed a steel slat barrier to halt the deadly flow of these illegal traffickers, smugglers, and terrorists. Every day that we deprive our border patrol and ICE officers the resources they need, we put many innocent lives in harm's way. It should be bipartisan. I think it will end up being bipartisan. I really do. Illegal immigration also strains public services that Americans depend on, and illegal immigration drives down wages for the neediest Americans. No one who calls themselves a progressive should support illegal immigration. Open borders hurts poor Americans more than anyone else in our society. In life, there are certain principles worth fighting for, principles that are more important than politics, party, or personal convenience. The safety and security and sovereignty of the United States is the most important principle of all. If we don't stand strong for our national borders, then we cease to be a nation, and we betray our commitment to the loyal citizens of our great country. I look forward to signing a bill that fulfills our fundamental duty to the American people. It is all about, and I say this in any way they want to hear it, it's all about America first. We have to put our country first. We have to put our people first. And we have to put safety first. So thank you all very much. And we'll be working on that, Mitch and Paul and Kevin and everybody, and we'll see what we can do. But hopefully that'll all come together.
Get some additional perspective now on all these major stories from House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican from California. Mr. Leader, thanks for joining us. First of all, give us just an update of how you think this gets solved from your point of view.
Well, first of all, Brett, think about this. We've already had 75% of the government funding. We're debating the last 25%. This is about national security, about border security. So the Senate sent over to us what is a continuing resolution that funds the government as is with no border security in there, even though we've already been funding and building the wall. It also had nothing in there when it came to disasters. Remember the hurricanes in North Carolina, in Florida, in Georgia, or the devastating fires in California. So what we will do, and remember there are two separate bodies here. It happens on every bill. We will take a continuing resolution. We will add $5 billion in that for border security. We'll also add the money in there for disaster relief for those states of devastation because they can't wait. A lot of those individuals can't go and plant, can't rebuild. Entire cities are burnt in California, and we'll send that over to the Senate. They can take action. We don't have a problem until Friday, tomorrow late. I think there's some differences and we can find common ground. It's the way our government's designed to find common ground and come to a solution.
Right. But do you think you have the votes? Because
yes.
You think you have the votes in the House.
We will have the votes in the House. We will pass it tonight and we will send it to the Senate.
Now the question is about the Senate, Mr. Leader.
Yes.
Because you have Chuck Schumer saying we're not doing it. You have senators over in the Senate who lost or they were stepping aside, and they may decide they're not going to do this. So where's your optimism, if you have any, about getting it past the Senate to avoid a partial shutdown?
Well, first of all, if I listen to Chuck Schumer just a week ago, he said he would fund the wall at $1.6, $1.8 billion. Is he now saying he would not do that? If I look at what he voted on just a few years back, 2013, he funded and voted for a wall in that process as well. So is Chuck Schumer changing his position from the past? And this is the real challenge here. The American people have to understand. Yes, Republicans are in the majority. We will pass it in the House. But the rules say you have to have 60 votes in the Senate. So it really comes down to, does Chuck Schumer want to shut the government down over the idea of protecting our borders? Think about the number of people who've been caught illegal, the number of criminals who've been caught, the number of terrorists, but also the number of children who've been saved from human trafficking. This is important. Also the disaster relief for a number of those states that have been waiting months for this money to come through. Is he going to go home for Christmas and not solve this problem?
Mr. Leader, this seemed to change dramatically today. You went to the White House. The president, what did he tell you? He said he's not going to sign it, even though going in, did you not believe that they were going to sign the CR?
I don't think the president changed at all. The president has been very clear about getting border security. The House has been very clear about it. The only person who has changed their position in this is Chuck Schumer. And one of the real concerns of why Chuck Schumer's changed his position is it comes to about Nancy Pelosi's vote for Speaker. That comes January 3rd. She has a very tight vote going through. Chuck is afraid that if he does something about doing something with border security, that we would upset those new freshman Democrats that are more socialist coming in for her vote. I think the American people are more important. I think our security is more important than that, and we can do bigger things. Let's deal with this and solve it.
What do you tell, let's see, the 380,000 employees who would be furloughed, another 420,000 would be exempted from furloughs deemed essential, but they wouldn't get paychecks ahead of Christmas? And understanding that 75% of the government is funded already, the 25% still has a number of people.
Well, that's why we're doing this today, so we can get this all done. How many times have you watched this government, when it comes down to a deadline, to lift something that they haven't been able to do before? We have almost 99% of this all agreed to. The only difference here is Chuck Schumer changed his position about doing nothing along the border. Your viewers have watched what's gone on with the caravans, or the approximately 10 terrorists that get caught a day going through. That's a fundamental difference that we need to protect. And also the disaster money for all those states going through. What do you talk about those individuals, that entire city wiped out in California, that they're still in tents, or those farmers that have to plant again, or the hurricanes that hit from North Carolina down to Georgia and Florida. Those are devastations, or the air base that was hit down in Florida as well. These are things that need to get done this year, and we should put people before politics, and it really is going to come down to Chuck Schumer and what does he want to do.
Mr. Leader, I have two more questions for you. I know you have to leave for a vote.
Yes.
Steel slats, was this talked about at the White House? Is that somehow semantics, that it's not a wall, but it is a wall?
No, I think what the president was doing was what people see today and what he has built already going forward, the new design. It protects, it has view, you can actually view through it because of the slats that going through. It looks much different, and I think these are some of the ideas that when you look at what Schumer and Feinstein and others voted for just a few years back in the Senate, I think when they see this, they'd be more apt to support border security as well.
Okay, and Defense Secretary Jim Mattis announcing his resignation. There's no shading the fact that it comes after the announcement of a withdrawal of troops from Syria and a significant withdrawal planned in Afghanistan. Your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I want to thank General Jim Mattis. Think of his distinguished career. This is a man who's been serving his country since 1969. When he was 18 years old, he signed up for the Marines. He was in the first battle of Fallujah. So many of what has happened in the success of America in the last number of years, Jim Mattis has been a part of. And the success that he's had as Secretary of Defense as well. Yes, there's a difference of opinion going forward, but this man has served his country well, and he has fans on all sides of the aisle. And anyone that I've ever talked to that's been under his service has the greatest respect for him, and I do as well. I want to thank him for his service.
Are you not concerned about the turnover in this administration? Two national security advisors, General Flynn, General H.R. McMaster, the Secretary of State, obviously, the CIA director getting changed, now the White House Chief of Staff. Two of them have left. Are you concerned that this was a direct result from the president and how he's dealt with foreign policy?
It is a natural after the first 2 years, because these jobs are very trying on an individual, of making a switch. But I'd heard about General Mattis thinking about leaving prior to this, but I know there's decisions have been made, and I respect his decision. I looked at the CIA, Pompeo, he moved up to Secretary of State. Yes, there's changes going through, but you want to find to get the very best people on the bus, and I think Jim Mattis has been the very best going forward.
And are you concerned about the Syria move?
I've watched what this administration's been able to do, something that the Obama administration had not been able to do by combating ISIS and making the influence and growing our military. I have concerns with the decision that the president had made. I think there's things that we should relook on that, especially from a strategic point of view around the world for our allies and others, and what that decision will make for our future allies going forward.
Mr. Leader, we appreciate your time. I know you have to go to a vote. I hope you're not here through Christmas, and we'll touch base tomorrow.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody being here. We've had a very busy 2 or 3 days. It's been very positive. Things are happening that haven't happened in our government for a long time. The other night, as you know, we had a vote on border security, and I think we want to discuss this just for a second. But the House of Representatives voted 217 to 185, approving strong border security and the money necessary to take care of the barrier, wall, or steel slats, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same. And it was a tremendous evening for the Republicans, to be honest with you, because the level of spirit, the level of happiness. A lot of people came out. They said they have never seen, one man in particular, he's been there for over 20 years. He said, I've never seen spirit or enthusiasm like this. They came from all parts of the country. A couple of them came from other parts outside. So I say all parts of the world in order to vote. And they voted, and it was an incredible vote. And we were told that you would never get the House to vote. Well, we were able to get the House to vote. And it wasn't that we did it, they did it. They were incredible. So I want to thank in this case, House Republicans, because what they did was rather incredible. And now the Senate is looking at it. We just had a meeting with some of our great senator Republicans and lasted for a long time. Tremendous enthusiasm for border security. And I think I can speak for them very strongly when I say they want to see something happen on border security. They want the security of safety. They want safety for our country. Drugs are pouring in, and we've done an incredible job considering we have no barrier. But drugs are pouring into our country. Human trafficking is at the all-time worst in history because of the internet. And the human trafficking problem is a problem that has gone on through the ages, but it's never been worse because of the internet all over the world. This isn't the United States, this is all over the world. So we need border security, and the Republicans in the Senate, as you know, are taking it up today. And it's really up to the Democrats, totally up to the Democrats as to whether or not we have a shutdown. It's possible that we'll have a shutdown. I would say the chances are probably very good because I don't think Democrats care so much about maybe this issue, but this is a very big issue. It's an issue of crime. It's an issue of safety. It's an issue of least importantly, dollars. Spend $285 billion a year on illegal immigration. We have to finally do it. The wall will pay for itself on a monthly basis. I mean, literally every month it pays for itself. So we're talking about small amounts of money. Think of it, we approved and we got good Democrat support. Military last year, $700 billion. Recently, $716 billion for the military. And here we're talking about $5 billion. So it's a tiny fraction, but unfortunately, they've devoted their lives to making sure it doesn't happen. And that wasn't for what should happen, that was for political reasons. So we are going to be working very hard to get something passed in the Senate. There's a very good chance it won't get passed. It's up to the Democrats. So it's really the Democrat shutdown, because we've done our thing. When Nancy Pelosi said you'll never get the votes in the House, we got them, and we got them by a big margin, 217 to 185. So now it's up to the Democrats as to whether or not we have a shutdown tonight. I hope we don't, but we're totally prepared for a very long shutdown. And this is our only chance that we'll ever have, in our opinion, because of the world and the way it breaks out, to get great border security. Ronald Reagan tried many years ago, got a note from a member of his family, many years ago tried to get a wall. And he fought for a long time during his entire term, and he was never able to get a wall. And I consider him to be a great president. He knew what he was doing. We are going to, one way or the other, we're going to get a wall, we're going to get a barrier, we're going to get anything you want to name it. You can name it anything you want. But we cannot let what's been going on in this country over the last 10 years, we just can't let it happen. Now to a very positive note. Criminal justice reform.